Hello. This is ZUDECAST number 83. We got a crazy one for you. I'm just going to start off with some fun facts about today's topic. MKULTRA. Ever heard of it? Probably not. The fun facts. The project's intentionally oblique CIA cryptonym is made up of the diagraph MK, meaning that the project was sponsored by the agency's Technical Services Division, followed by the word Ultra, which had previously been used to designate the most secret classification of World War II intelligence. Other related cryptonyms include MK Naomi and MK Delta.
I love that its name is literally just technically very secret.
Yeah.
That's like the translation.
It's very secret, but we're uncovering those secrets. Us, the Zudes, we're giving you never before seen information on the deepest, darkest secrets of the government.
The government.
The government.
Indeed. Not big fans here. Okay, so MKUltra.
Yeah.
Damn.
What's up, you guys? Shout out for everybody tuning in. We already got Let It Eat podcast in the chat. What's up, y'all?
Oh.
Hey. And we got Matt the Tadpole. Hey, what's up, dog?
Yeah, we are doing the X-Files now. And, you know, you got to love
Z-Files.
some Beethoven. You got to love some Ludwig van, as, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hopefully we don't get copyrighted for that. But anyways.
Public domain.
Public domain, right?
Yeah.
It's Ludwig van. He didn't do nothing to nobody. What's up, y'all? It's your boy, Crispy Grooves, here once again. We got Walter Subjack right here.
What's up, y'all? How we doing? It's Adrian Grody.
And we got, of course,
It's your boy, Robert Ware. How's it going? To my left.
Christopher, how's it going, everybody?
Yep. And, you know, running our boards today is the usual.
As always, Taba, just here on the boards doing my thing.
Yeah.
Christoph and Taba, you guys are both not ready for what's about to go down. I don't even know that I'm ready.
We're
dude.
unprepared.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
I'm here for it. I'm excited. You guys are going to educate me as you guys always do on these different topics that I am moderately knowledgeable about, and I come, you know, very knowledgeable at the end of every episode.
Yeah.
So it's awesome.
Sweet. Is there anything you guys want to say about it before we jump in?
You know, just the usual. If by the end of the video you appreciate what we did here, consider dropping a little like and subscribe. It does help us out a lot. You know, puts us forward in the algorithm. The usual. Salty to say it, but we got to do it. Anyway,
Definitely.
Moving forward.
And also, if you want to hit us up on Coffee, we got a little donation link so we can keep bringing you excellent investigative work like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Buy us a coffee, man.
Sweet.
All right, before we get started here, you want to hit that wide zoom of the whole board?
Oh,
just so we
dude,
can get
yeah.
a quick overview of what we're diving in here.
Let's see what we're
if you
in
want to
for.
shift it to like the other screen.
Yeah,
here.
the game screen.
Game screen.
Yeah.
Okay,
There
here
we go.
go.
That's the big boy
that's
screen.
the
There we go.
That's the one.
Holy.
So we got a real life conspiracy board for you here
Dang.
today, ladies and gentlemen. Lots of key
Oh my
players.
God.
Yeah,
different
this is a
groups,
lot.
People, locations, events, all brought to you in a very succinct and chronological order. Hopefully succinct. We'll find out.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm
stay
excited.
tuned.
So,
Cool.
just for all of those playing along at home, this yellow line here is kind of just our major through line here. And then we've got red is for all of the CIA baddies here.
Yeah.
So you can follow those red arrows. And then we got white is going to be all the different like mad scientist types. And then we've got we got sort of the good guys of the situation. We got auditors, we got whistleblowers, people that are trying to find the truth on all this chaos that's been going on for the past, what is it, like 70 plus years
Yeah.
of, at least that we know of I mean, we're talking mind control, we're talking torture, we're talking dosing people, we're talking advanced interrogation techniques,
No sleep.
we're talking hookers, we're talking elephants. We got a lot, dude. Well, there's so much to it.
Crazy.
And
I'm
like,
so excited for you guys to get to the hookers.
yeah. Oh, we will.
Oh, sir.
Oh, don't you wait.
All right.
Well, where
So
do we start with such a board?
So we start. First let's cover our sources really quickly, just so you guys know. Basically, all the information we're pulling here is either directly from the CIA.gov Freedom of Information Act reading room, which is all publicly available information of declassified although slightly sanitized documents in a lot of cases. And then Intellipedia, which is basically Wikipedia for the CIA. It's not typically public access, but a lot of these documents were explicitly on Intellipedia before they hit the Freedom of Information Act room. So there you go. Those will be linked above. And then we kind of pulled a little bit of articles from here and there that may or may not be slightly speculative, but we'll not talk about that.
That's okay, dude. We can speculate. Well, that's the thing, because a lot of times things get, documents get lost in some kind of document boating accident, or some kind of accidental fire, or things like that.
Oh no, I lost all my documents in a series of small fires.
Yes, exactly. Shout out to FOIA requests. That's like where we're able to find a lot of this stuff.
Yep. And I'm sure there's plenty of documents that are still highly classified, haven't been released yet, despite multiple and extensive requests on behalf of the public. So to save you the trouble of reading through these fucking decrepit old pieces of newspaper, we've really parsed out the information here on the board. But of course, those will be linked in the description if you want to check them out as well.
Yeah, MKULTRA.
Yeah.
Right.
Our entry point here is 1945, I want to say.
Man, it's crazy just looking at all this. So 1977 was when all this stuff started coming out about it. But before then, it was all speculation, and then there was already movies and different things kind of illustrating what people thought was going on before any of this stuff was officially released. But so starting at the very top here, we got Operation Paperclip. So if you guys don't know about Operation Paperclip, this is actually where Clippy from Microsoft was originated from.
Seriously? Are you? No. Wow.
No. But this is
Clippy's got some weird ties.
Yeah.
He's got some weird friends,
bro.
bro.
Ask what Clippy was doing between 1933 and 1945.
Oh god.
Clippy was
like, "Do you need some help with that, mein Führer?"
Oh my god. He's like, "Go away, Clippy."
Oh my god.
Oh shit.
So 1945, 1959.
All right. So if you don't know, 1945 is when World War II, the greatest of all wars, ended. And so basically, it's almost common knowledge at this point that there was a bunch of German scientists. I'm not going to call them all Nazi scientists, but they were German scientists under Nazi occupation,
whether voluntarily or not, it's, they were part
under
of the
the
party
waving flag
in most cases.
They'll do science for anyone, as we found out, because basically, let me just read this. A precursor of the MKUltra program began in 1945 when the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency was established and given direct responsibility for Operation Paperclip, which was a program to recruit former Nazi scientists. Some of these scientists studied torture and brainwashing, and several had just been identified and prosecuted as war criminals during the Nuremberg trials.
Right. So who's the Joint Intelligence Objectives Agency?
I think we can go down here and follow this conspiracy line here. We got the JIOA here. They were the intelligence organization directly responsible for Operation Paperclip, an OSS and Army CIC program for recruiting German scientists for U.S. government employment, primarily from 1945 to 1949, and then many were former members and some were former leaders of the Nazi Party. So these guys, it wasn't just low-ranking whatever grunts. Like, these were like higher ups. They were doing all sorts of weird shit, and we're like, you know what? We can make some use of these guys.
So this was basically just a bunch of military committee people, both from the U.S. and I do believe the U.K. There was a couple of reps in there, but it was just all these World War II guys, who were officially or unofficially, I should say, organizing this as like a World War II provision, and then the next event we get to kind of establishes them as a more official group, more official branch here.
So as everything happens with the government, once they always have this this is a wartime provision. This is a temporary thing. And then like a couple of years later, it becomes a very permanent thing.
Oh, yeah.
Never trust a temporary government program because they're still around here. So the National Security Act happened in 1947. With the end of World War II, the Joint Chiefs of Staff was officially established under the National Security Act. So the JCS consisted of a chairman, the Chief of Staff of the Army, and the Chief of Staff of the Air Force. Which was established as a separate service by the same act. So that was kind of where the Air Force was even
born. Yeah, the National Security Act. Yeah.
Interesting. And the Chief of Naval Operations. So you got like the trifecta of Army bros, military bros. You got the commandant of the Marine Corps was to be consulted on matters concerning the Corps, but was not a regular member. So you got a bunch of old white guys who are all members of this.
Yeah, basically. Department of Defense guys and just general all-around high-ups, the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So, yeah, it was us. We were just like, hey, what's up, Germany?
Right.
And then we went to go get them.
So it seems like the implication here is that some of these guys probably would have been in big trouble had they not been basically saved. They're like, you can come work for us now, and then not be executed. And they're like, okay.
Yeah, both on the U.S. side and in the case of World War II, the people who are actually forming this joint intelligence objectives agency, right? So they were both guilty of doing some weird and very suspect kind of things. And yeah, they just kind of lucked out by being an established agency by the end of it.
Right.
So, yeah, moving forward.
So this is kind of like the origin of the CIA itself.
Yeah,
Just about.
I don't know if it's necessarily the origin of this of the CIA, but this is how this entire timeline began. So with Project Artichoke here, they essentially absorbed a lot of these Nazi scientists who were acquired through Operation Paperclip. So Operation Paperclip is essentially a foundational block upon which the rest of this stuff kind of rests. So they're not directly correlated other than the fact that a lot of scientists were absorbed from Operation Paperclip into Project Artichoke.
Right. Yeah. But basically what I'm getting at here is that the very beginning of the CIA, it's not like they were just, we're just gathering intelligence on what the enemy is doing. They're like, all right, let's go straight to the brainwashing. Like, they did not waste any fucking time getting straight to like the torture techniques, the brainwashing techniques. They're like,
no time wasted at all. As you can see, we're starting pretty early. This is 51 now. Yeah.
Okay, so we got Project Artichoke. And so the primary goal of Project Artichoke was to determine whether a person could be involuntarily made to perform an act of an attempted assassination. The project also studied the effect of isolation, hypnosis, forced addiction to, and subsequent withdrawal from morphine and other chemicals, including LSD, to produce amnesia and other vulnerable states in subjects. Project Artichoke originally began as Project Bluebird. On August 20th, 1951, Alan Dulles ordered Bluebird to be expanded and centralized and renamed it to Project Artichoke, which quickly became a power base for Sidney Gottlieb, who's like he's like one of the main players in this whole thing.
Let's take a look. Let's pause it there and take a look what these guys are up to, because it is quite interesting. I found. Yeah, follow that.
It's crazy.
That red connection.
Oh
there.
yeah. Before we go there, So they were doing experiments with special interrogation techniques on captured prisoners overseas at black sites. So this was like a very just like post World War II. They're like, let's start doing some weird shit on political prisoners, prisoners of war, and all that kind of stuff. And so now we got this big connection here to all of the big CIA baddies. You're gonna get familiar with them. Should we just like do the run through the gambit of these guys?
Yeah, let's start with Alan at the top. So yeah, this guy was the former deputy director of the CIA. He's essentially the one who approved the entire program, starting with Project Artichoke, moving on up.
Right, man. So this guy's got some. He's got some notches in his belt. He's got the coup in Iran, the coup in Guatemala, and he was fired by Kennedy in 1961 after the Bay of Pigs incident.
Yeah, all of which he took a nice big fall for and a lot of public criticism.
And then he was appointed to the Warren Commission in 1963 by Lyndon Johnson.
After
Yeah,
being
so-
fired by Kennedy. So
Right,
yeah.
Kennedy fired him, and then he's like,
Yeah, well, yeah. And then JFK got fired from being alive.
Yeah, so if you're unaware, the Warren Commission was a commission that President Lyndon Baines Johnson put together to investigate the assassination of Kennedy.
that's one of the most hack government investigations of all time, too, by the way.
What's
If you ever look into-
the scoop on the Warren Commission?
It's just really, it was just faulty every step of the way. This like super like inexperienced doctor was commissioned to do the autopsy. A bunch of stuff went missing. A bunch of people involved just didn't do their jobs. Like, and there's it's just like the most half-assed thing ever. Like, even by like cop standard, police standards,
Right.
it's just like they did a horrible job on purpose, clearly, you know. But
For the goddamn president.
for the president,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
nuts, dude.
That's a classic demoralization technique, though, is just to make people's jobs as difficult or as like meaningless as you possibly can, just become an obstruction.
That's crazy, dude. So he was fired by Kennedy and then gets rehired to look at Kennedy's brains.
Yes.
Basically.
Yes,
Like,
very
like
interesting.
that's crazy. Like that's one of those
must be
things
wild.
where it seems like you should maybe recuse yourself from that that situation.
Yeah,
But yeah.
He was criticized for that too, for it being a conflict of interest.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
right? Like if you got personal beef with Kennedy
Yeah,
and then you're in charge of examining like what happened after he died, like that's pretty wild. I didn't know that.
yep.
And then so we've got the Offices of Scientific Intelligence, OSI, is basically the department of the CIA that's in charge of a lot of science shit.
Yeah, so
And
that's primarily Alan Doles and our boy Sidney Gottlieb over here. So he's
Sidney
the
Gottlieb.
spy master. Yeah.
The Spy Master, hired by Alan Doles, joined the CIA July 13th, 1951. He headed the CIA's assassination attempts and mind control programs in the 1950s and 60s. Oh, he's a liaison to Lockheed Corporation, later Lockheed Martin. If
Yeah.
you're familiar with, they just did their little Pride March
Yeah, right.
with the Lockheed Martin, the LGBT bombs.
That's insane. Just like the conflict of like ideas there.
They literally made
They're
the
a
meme.
bomb company.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
make bombs.
Yeah,
like,
they're
weapons and munition.
weapons. Yeah.
they had like a
so-
big parade.
Obviously makes sense for the
Yeah.
CIA to have an inside guy at one of the biggest weapons manufacturers in the world. So interesting stuff.
Yeah, have no fear. Our weapons manufacturers are very inclusive. And he worked at the Food and Drug Administration, where he developed tests to measure and presence of drugs in the human body.
Yeah.
Thanks, asshole.
Yep. So he started his career early. So he actually started at the FDA. That was like one of his earliest undertakings, really. Went through a couple of different positions before finally ending up at the CIA.
And that's this guy on the left here, by the way. That's
Yeah.
not the guy
Yes.
on the right. Yeah, it's this guy right here.
They all kind of have the same vibe. And then we've got Frank Olsen. So he was a U.S. Army Chemical Corps. Helped develop bioweapons for the U.S. during World War II. He helped develop aerosol anthrax along former Nazi scientists acquired by U.S. through Operation Paperclip.
Jesus.
And then he oversaw Operation Big Switch, which is what we're getting to in a little bit, which involves the repatriation of Korean War POWs who were believed to be brainwashed. And so this guy's got, he's behind a lot of stuff. But he kind
what
of
a charming mug. Look at
yeah.
that. Look at that.
No, he was cool, man. Before he fell off, you know.
I know, right?
Oh my god.
So he attempted to resign from the Special Operatives Committee in 1953, and then the death of Frank Olsen.
we
spoiler
can
alert.
skip that till,
Oh,
till
okay.
later. Yeah.
Okay.
Kind of looks
well-
like a closeted Nazi.
Everybody on this goddamn episode is a closeted enthusiast of a certain Reich. Yes.
He's like, I
Yeah.
don't support them per se. I just enjoy the culture.
Yeah, no. Every one of these fools, you'll see, they all have a connection to it.
It's about the history. It's not about the flag.
I like their cars.
It's about heritage.
Yeah, it's about. Yeah.
Oh no, that's horrible.
I just like I just like Beethoven.
All right. So, Project. Oh, wait, did you get to Operation Big Switch right here? Did you skip over
Oh, I
that
skipped
right
Big
there?
Switch. Okay, here we go.
Yeah,
Okay,
so,
wait, did I skip
um,
anything else? Okay. So yeah, so after Project Artichoke, we got Operation Big Switch. So basically, from what I'm gathering here, this was when the Korean War was starting. After so
No,
there's
this
like
is when the Korean War was ending.
or,
Yes,
okay,
yes.
right. So or after it ended, because like the Korean War pretty much started like very shortly after World War II ended.
Yes.
And then so there was a ton of POWs. So let's see. Replying to UNC Commander General Mark W. Clark's request for the exchange of sick and wounded prisoners, North Korean leader Kim Il-sung and PVA Commander Peng Dae-hwa, I don't know. And then basically someone sum this up for me.
So essentially, North Korea replied to the United Nations Command's request to exchange prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention. So North Korea replied. They said, "Yeah, we're down. Cool." And then China was like, "Hey, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Except we should pick a neutral state somewhere in between, just so everybody's prisoners get sent there, and then they get repatriated under a neutral authority." Right. But China was very adamant that their people get repatriated back to China specifically.
Right.
They didn't want them to have a choice in the matter. But the UNC was like, no, we're going to repatriate people as they see fit. So if they want to stay here in the United States or wherever it was they were being held prisoner, and if they want to go back to their home country, either is a valid option.
So China was more in the sense of like, we just want to put. Were they saying we just want to put all these POWs in a country that's not China, not Korea, and not the U.S.?
Yeah, so,
like a Switzerland of sorts.
Yeah, a Switzerland to oversee the repatriation of the prisoners of war, a neutral party essentially. But China adamantly wanted that neutral party, to give them all their people.
Right.
So,
Damn, it's like.
So they went back and forth and they negotiated for a while and eventually settled. They came to a conclusion on getting everybody's prisoners of war back to the proper country of origin.
Right. So China was like, well, let's see if your POWs really love you, you got to let them go and then they'll come back.
Oh my God.
Well, so that's crazy. So basically you had a bunch of Chinese and Korean POWs who kind of lucked out then, right? In a sense of getting to stay in the U.S.
From what I gather, yeah. So they were, from what I understand, pardoned more or less, and essentially in being repatriated.
Wow.
So I can imagine there was a number of KVA and PVA soldiers who ended up staying in the United States and just being introduced into the American public.
Wow.
So that's kind of crazy. Just war criminals, supposedly war criminals or prisoners of war.
Right. But the big takeaway from Operation Big Switch is that some of these people came back and they were like, "Yo, these guys look pretty brainwashed to me," or like that was kind of the rumor that was going around.
That had been a rumor since World War II, more or less, and Project Artichoke sort of began as a response to rumors of brainwashing through North Korea and China. Right. So that is what really kicked it off. And then Operation Big Switch is primarily negotiations between these, three parties about exchange of prisoners of war. So this is happening March 28th, 1953 through around April 7th, 1953. So just like a couple of weeks period, like 9-10 days for the negotiations to take place. And then not even a week later, we have MKUltra being approved.
Right. The titular MKUltra. So it really didn't take a whole lot of time for them to. It basically went from a very down low project where they're like, all right, we're gonna have these Nazi scientists and people, we're gonna like secretly brainwash just a couple people but it became a wide, expansive thing where they're it got to the point where they're hiring different subcontractors and different people at different universities.
Yep.
Harvard's a big one. University of Oklahoma that we're gonna get to in a second. But where it's like, oh no, this was just a college experiment, but it's like, who paid for these experiments? It was the CIA. Through one way or another.
And we'll get into the more specifics of how and where that happened later down. But yeah, basically Sidney Gottlieb, the spy master, man, this guy, he was like, Project Artichoke, that's not enough oversight for me. So he proposed Project MKUltra. And though they are not explicitly being stated anywhere as being correlated to Operation Big Switch and Operation Little Switch, which follows immediately after, I have a sneaking suspicion that his understanding that all these prisoners of war who were believed to be brainwashed or traumatized or tortured in some way were all about to be repatriated, he saw that as an opportunity to expand his oversight and his research into the North Korean and Chinese brainwashing methods that had been, rumored and discussed. So,
and something too that was going on at the same time is they had the suspicions going on that POWs were being brainwashed and communists had ways of brainwashing their own citizens. There was thought reform happened in 1951 right after the Korean War ended in China. Mao Zedong had a whole movement going on with it, and that's going to be up, I believe, on the board
Yeah,
here.
we had that.
up and a little to the left.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
Right. So like at the same time that all this stuff was starting to go on, we got
they did believe there were rumors about this, and Mao Zedong's regime did have plans for a society-wide cultural reshaping of how people thought. So there's 3 anti and 5 anti were the thought reform. I forget what exactly it translates to, something different slightly, but thought reform is just like the American translation. But they started surveillance campaigns, propaganda campaigns. They made people denounce ideologies because those people that were studying abroad in different countries, they made them denounce that and say that, oh, you trying to learn those things is against our party. This guy named Zhu Enlai, he made call to arm oneself with Marxist Leninism and throw away individualism, liberalism, and European bourgeoisie ideas. So they banned sociology, economics, political science, and their goal was to create the new socialist man, which was like the ideal citizen for what they wanted their society to be. And then they had these things called struggle sessions too, so where if you weren't abiding by how they wanted you to be, they basically would rat you out to the party, and then like the whole block would just roast your ass and grill you in public and scream at you and talk shit to you and call you a failure and call you a piece of shit and all this stuff, so that you get nailed into your brain that you're not benefiting the party. The party's mad at you if you're not believing in what they want. So there was a massive campaign that came out right before, even before MKUltra officially kicked off. Like they had the suspicions that something like this was ready to go down, and they weren't wrong. Right. So.
That's crazy. This was just sort of boiling on the surface. I can only imagine what sort of methods they were using on actual prisoners of war at like black sites on their own terms.
Communists are big on the totality, just totalitarianism. You have to think a certain way too. North Korea too, they're one of the most brainwashed countries on the world in history. They're like the prime example of it. This is where it comes from really, though, is the Maoism.
Yeah, that's put a lot of tension in the air globally, didn't it?
Yeah, I was gonna say we can go back to the full screen too when we're not reading.
But let's see what that's just important to mention too, because then go to the right is it's funny because a big thing they're afraid of was somebody being able to become a communist assassin against their will, and then this book, The Manchurian Candidate, came out. And it's almost like on some soft disclosure shit, because it's like, this is a valid concern that the government's actually worried about. And they started these big old programs to realize, like, can someone be controlled against their will? So it's really crazy how the Korean War, it's just like a perfect shitstorm, the aftermath of World War II. You got lots of scientists with no jobs, no loyalty to any country. You got another country on the rise, rising powers trying to beef with each other technology-wise. Psychology, too, was still just new in this era. Freud was in the 20s and shit, so a lot of the human mind was still just this unmarked territory.
Kind of unexplored,
uncharted territory is what I meant.
I was gonna say with the whole struggle session thing, that's something that we can kind of relate to today. That's basically what Twitter is. Like if you say a dissenting opinion or have like some kind of something that doesn't go along with the general plan of whatever the mainstream school of thought is, you will just get harassed. But that was literally it was live action. It was live action Twitter.
Yeah,
Back then.
lightweight, basically. Yeah, just everybody just took turns screaming at you.
That's crazy. And then it also, when you think about Twitter, the Twitter is a bird. And you know what else they did with Mao is they killed all the sparrows.
Oh my God.
That was a whole thing.
And also,
I actually just that's so strange. I just literally watched a video that was totally unrelated to MKUltra, but it talked about that exact thing.
Yeah, it's not really related, but
Yeah,
it's an
right,
interesting
right.
thing. But it's like, how could you convince so many people just be like, yeah, let's kill all the sparrows? It was like something to like save their crops or whatever.
It ended up being one of the worst man-made disasters
Yeah.
in recorded history because tens of millions of people died of famine because of all of the locust overpopulation because they killed the sparrows almost to extinction. Now all the locusts were just unattended and just reproduced like crazy, and so
That's
they ate all
crazy.
their crops.
I can imagine. But I beg to differ because birds aren't real and they were invented by the CIA.
True. Well, actually, no. Birds used to be real, and then all the Maoist Chinese killed them all, and then the CIA had to replace the bird reserves with the fake birds.
Fake bird.
Oh,
That's the real. That's the real.
birdception.
So
We
I
just
mean,
cracked the code.
with all this stuff that was going on, it's not the exact. It's not a straight up Clockwork Orange, like sit you down into a room with your eyelids open, put, just like forcing you to watch it. But it's the social pressure and the social, I don't even know, like it was just a way to control people at large where, controlling a whole society is as, that's, fuck, what am I even trying to say here? Like trying to control a society at large, you have to use different techniques than when you're just going for one specific person, in a small room, and you're like, I'm gonna turn this motherfucker crazy. Which is
using the power of groupthink and peer
the-
pressure.
And again, too, it's the prisoners of war had been coming back disavowing the United States again because of they were like disavowing what they were doing in Korea, and they're like, obviously these guys are brainwashed. That's the only way they can not believe in what they're doing. So that's a whole nother thing.
Right.
But
They were brainwashed. It just happened to be a good enough reason to expand the oversight of their brainwashing and mind control programs.
Right. Well, and if you have people that have already been brainwashed, then it's like it's not your fault, or like it's not the ethical blame is not on you if you want to examine them and experiment on them. It's like, well, they already got brainwashed by the Chinese, so we might as well just take a look and see what's going on in their old noggins.
It's an obligation as a matter of national security,
Right.
even,
Because that was like part of the struggle session thing, or part of the interrogation that the Chinese would do to American soldiers. They would start out small. They're like, if you want to be able to eat today, tell me one thing that you don't like about America's foreign policy or about America's laws or the way they do things. And you're like, well, I guess I don't like such and such. And then they're like, okay, you can eat. But then like every day it would just get further and further until you like disavow your entire country or whatever. And you don't even like know where you stand anymore.
You're just saying it to be saying it, and you're like, I don't even fucking...
Because at first you're just saying it just so you can eat.
Man's got to eat, Julian.
But then at some point you're like, you start making that mental association, and then you also might be like, damn, they're kind of right. Then you start like tripping yourself out. You're like, am I a patriot? I don't know.
Well, yeah,
it's an
and
identity
I
crisis.
assume some of them. I mean, the longer you're there, the more I think hopeless it becomes that you might not even go back to America. You don't know. You think you're gonna die, or you think that you're just gonna be stuck there forever. So it probably gets to a point where you're like, well, I'm not going back, so yeah, fuck it.
Losing hope, losing all their
exactly.
loyalty and
they did
passion
everything.
there. Yeah,
They did everything.
it's unfortunate.
Okay, so then back to the slide here. See, so MKUltra is approved 1953, and then this is largely in response to Chinese, Soviet, and North Korean use of mind control techniques on U.S. prisoners of war in Korea. And then you've got Operation Little Switch right after that, which is essentially it's kind of just more of the same, really, where it's just
So this is the after part of Operation Big Switch. This is essentially the actual repatriation of soldiers, the
Right.
transportation and logistical operations surrounding the repatriation.
right.
Well, something we were saying too, we're making the connection. It's like, yeah, they kicked it into high gear once they knew that they were going to be sending out a bunch of prisoners of the war potentially back into another country. They're like, we might as well fill their heads with whatever we can before we send them back. And yeah, I don't know. We think that's got something to do with it.
Yeah, sneaky conspiracy connection, not established.
Not
fact,
a hard
but
fact, but
it makes sense.
Coincidence of timing.
Yeah,
Right.
the timing is uncanny. It all took place in about a month period. So yeah.
So basically they went from testing mind control things on prisoners of war to starting to test it on college students, and that, or
Well,
and
they
then,
tested it on whoever they could. They
On
tested
whoever they
on,
could.
on
Yeah.
drug
On
addicts,
each other.
on prostitutes, on each other. Yeah. A big thing was with the agents was they would dose each other. They'd attempt to dose each other because the idea was if I could dose you, the enemy could dose you just as easily, and you're fucking up.
Yeah.
So they would dose each other left and right, and especially if somebody knew a little too much, they'd dose them a little extra hard, which is what happened to Frank Olsen here. Go ahead and pull that back up.
it's like a fun little college hazing ritual that they would do into the new guys in the CIA
In a fucked up way.
Yeah, well, it's like they catch you slipping, right? Like if someone can basically slip you a Mickey or whatever, then it's like you gotta be able to watch your back better. If someone can slip a big old tab of acid in your drink, or and it's like that's the
drops
thing.
back
It wasn't
then.
even tabs. It was just straight drops. And they'd probably drop a lot in there.
Yeah,
And
it was
I'm
a
sure
lot
it's-
stronger back in the day too, because this is before anything's even really available to the public.
Right.
Like,
and
The
this
concentrated lab chemical format still
Right.
just like
yeah.
how powerful can we make
Dosed by
this
Sidney
solution?
Gottlieb.
So yeah,
a
so
retreat.
yeah, they would have an MKULTRA retreat for all the people who are involved with this. And Frank Olsen was already expressing that he said, I'm not comfortable with what I'm doing here, because they were doing a lot of experiments on animals too, on monkeys. And so they were just killing monkeys left and right with the LSD experiments and with just different like chemicals they're pumping into them. And so he was starting to express to you who wasn't really comfortable with the whole thing. And then at this retreat, he gets dosed extra hard. And I think we have more details on
Yeah.
that other
We
slide
got some
from him.
9
So
days later.
more Frank Olsen
Yeah.
stuff.
go
here.
back down to his other page, because
Oh, yep.
yeah, his other one, because
follow the thread here.
go back,
we
yeah,
go.
because it just got included down here. But go down because we put more details on it.
right
I'm
here?
pretty sure.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
scroll on the page. Yeah.
Okay, so
All
yeah,
the way at the bottom.
yeah. Oh, okay, so the death of Frank Olsen.
It's just the
It's
same
shit.
details.
Okay,
Okay,
all right,
yeah.
never mind. I thought we had more.
Well,
So
so
how did he die? You guys didn't say.
So he got dosed, and he basically jumped out of a hotel window.
Although it was 9 days later, so
Yeah.
I'm imagining the trip that he went on was pretty fucked up for him to have to unalive himself after the fact, not 9
Right.
days removed from the fact. But I think the timing of which is either highly coincidental or it's the fact that he was dosed was rather just foreshadowing for his later, untimely
Right.
death.
Right.
So-
I think we didn't include it on here, but there was details like the hotel manager apparently made a statement. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know. The way it was set up was the window was high up, and then there's like the bed in front of the window, so you'd have to fucking dive over the bed up through the window to throw yourself out of that window." Which seems ridiculous, you'd have to really just Superman jump through it. So
he was
sort
probably
of seems like
pushed
he was
out.
thrown,
Probably
pushed or
right,
thrown out.
because it's like all of these types of things. It's always ruled as a schmuicide first,
of course.
and then later they're like, actually, maybe this was something else, but it always kind of just gets pushed to the background, and it's still one of those things where it's like, I don't really know. But I think ultimately the president, I think it was Gerald Ford at that time, was like gave his family like an apology letter and everyth was like,
Well, they
so
tried
sorry
to
about
to
Frank.
settle out of
Yeah.
They tried to sue because they found out about them dosing each other and about
Yeah.
he was in these experiments with these, he was part of these projects and stuff. And so his family tried to sue, and they just settled out, and they just gave him hush money. Because it was 100%. Basically, it's like, we know who did it. We know you guys are fucking around with psychedelic drugs, and psychedelic drugs are found in his system at the end of this, and his brain's totally cooked. And
they probably fried him out of his fucking brain just to make the job easier.
And this was like the whole thing. This was 10, 15, 20 years before all the real like hippies and Grateful Dead and the Manson stuff. And this was like, I mean, I don't know exactly when LSD was invented, but this was shortly thereafter, basically. Like as soon as, I mean, because I don't know if it was, I don't know actually the exact origin of LSD, but it was like, it's a pretty synthesized drug. It's not like a thing that's been around forever.
It was a college professor made it.
It was right. And like I forget exactly what it is, but it like lysergic acid. It's made from what flower was it? I forget. But it's like, it's not something
ergot. It's from ergot mold.
Like ergot, or I think there was like another like seed of like I forget. Anyways, but it's not like weed or whatever where you can it just grows out of the ground. You can, you have to go through a pretty intense processing to make LSD. So this was like some new shit, and nobody really knew what the long-term consequences are or like how it really affects people.
Turns out the long-term consequences are typically not very severe, as it's not neurotoxic, as far as I'm aware, but it'll definitely send you if you take a few drops, and like you're not gonna have a fun time.
Well, that's almost what's crazier about LSD is because it's not actually like poisoning you in the same way that like you can get alcohol poisoning.
Yeah, it's not a poison the same way psilocybin is.
Or even that, right? Like but it can just mess up your whole psyche so much that it could push you to a place where you're like, I don't even want to be around anymore.
The dangers more lie in the sort of psychological connections that you make while you're tripping out, which I think is one of the themes of The Clockwork Orange, which we just watched again last night, by the way. And then just generally speaking, like that is the whole goal of like therapy, like is for you to make connections in your mind that you hadn't before. So I don't know. The experimentation, I think, was at least founded in something interesting, or or at least worth exploring.
Right. And so after they dosed Frank Olsen, they're like, damn, that was kind of unethical and shitty of us to do.
Sorry.
Let's try it on some more less reputable folks, maybe that won't be missed. Which brings us.
Hey, don't we have some important figures though to get into too? Because go down, isn't there? Have we met our boy yet?
Which boy?
Oh, he hasn't come into the picture yet.
Not quite yet.
All right.
But
damn, can you imagine though being at that retreat after that everyone's dosing each other? Like, could you imagine? Like they're like, "Hey guys, we're all gonna go on a retreat," and you're like, "Ah, fuck, nah, I'm not going." And they're like, "No, you have to go.
You gotta be right." Yeah. It's a mandatory work trip.
They're like just laughing a little too hard at his jokes.
You're just out there on the party boat, and you gotta watch your drink just so heavily.
That's crazy because it's so early in LSD where it's like you probably won't even put it together by the time it really hits you that it's like, I'm just tripping right now. They just dosed me with a bunch of acid. You're like,
just think my God, you're like, seeing Satan.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've never done it,
these guys knew
what it was.
These guys were working with it. You worked at the Department of Chemical Weapons and shit.
They would know more than anyone.
But you can feel it within about 5 to 10 minutes. It's like a caffeine or almost like a nicotine sort of feeling in your brain.
But I'm sure, as we're about to find out, there are plenty of innocent and unsuspecting people that they threw it on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this brings us to Operation Midnight Climax. So we got this is 1954. Operation Midnight Climax was an operation carried out by the CIA as a sub-project of MKULTRA. It was initially established in 1954, again by Sidney Gottlieb, and placed under the direction of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics in Boston, Massachusetts, with the federal narcotics agent and CIA consultant George Hunter White under the pseudonym Morgan Hall.
Ooh, very spy material.
They got fake names and everything, yeah.
Mr. Underhill.
So Sidney Gottlieb basis plan for Project MKUltra and Operation Midnight Climax off of interrogation method research under Project Artichoke. Unlike Project Artichoke, Operation Midnight Climax gave Gottlieb permission to test drugs on unknowing citizens, which made way for the legacy of this operation. Hundreds of federal agents, field operatives, and scientists work on these programs before they were shut down in the 60s. So basically, from what I understand, the operation went down like this. There was basically fake brothels, and then they would have fake hookers that were in on it.
Well, they were real hookers.
Or they
but-
yeah. Right. Well, they're real.
that fed ussy, you know.
They were faking a lot of things. But
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. So they were real hookers,
Yeah.
and that's like, again, when it's like the same concept where it's like, you're a criminal and we know it and we have this information on you, but if you do a little prank for us, we'll let you go.
Yeah.
Do something
And
a little
so-
strange for some change.
Exactly. Like,
Hey,
right.
man's got to eat, Julie.
And they probably, I mean, maybe they paid him too. I hope so.
I would hope.
That's intense work, because basically they would pull a Frank Olsen on these unsuspecting Johns who were going to a brothel or going to like a motel or whatever to meet with a hooker, and basically there would be like either like a one-way mirror type of thing where you think it's just a mirror, but then there's like a guy on the other side, like, but you know, or no, they're taking
he's
notes
taking
and
notes.
yeah.
Very studious.
And so, I mean, shout out to these hookers. They're brave as fuck, because like basically they had to secretly be like, oh, you want a drink? Just put like, you know, little drops of acid in their beer or whatever,
Yeah.
while they're not looking, while they're like taking a piss, and then give it to them. And then like 10-15 minutes later, they like, you know, Frank Olsen knew what acid was,
Yeah.
and he still freaked out to such a degree that he probably killed himself because of it.
Yeah.
But when you take these random Johns that have never heard of acid in their life, they don't know what psychedelic drugs even are probably, and then
Even if you do, acid is
Yeah.
a beast, man.
yeah, no, exactly. And so these guys would just get extremely high and then start freaking out, and I don't even know.
Well,
like,
a lot of them would start going to Pound Town and start getting extra degenerate, and then that's where the study was all about, because a lot of these guys were just degenerate in general. They're going to brothels already, and so the people who were recording, who were, you know, taking the test subjects and stuff, they would record it as well, take pictures as well, so blackmail these guys in addition to drugging them and doing tests on them, and it's just really interesting. I don't know.
it's kind of the perfect scheme, because then, you know, if you're this guy and you're like, oh my god, someone just like dosed me with like the most powerful psychedelics known to man, and then it's like, who are you gonna go tell? It's like, oh, what's like, well, where were you when this happened? And you're like, I don't know. I was at the laundromat. I mean, I was at the bar, or, you know, like, you can't, especially in the 50s, you can't just be like, yeah, so I was fucking a hooker,
Right.
and they dosed me.
Oh, don't tell me, wife.
No, exactly,
Right.
right. A lot of them probably did have wives, and
Right.
so they would be in big trouble. So it was like the perfect blackmail scheme.
Yep.
Which
Social pressure, man.
the CIA is great at that. Yeah.
Yeah. So what they actually acquired out of this, Lord knows what, but they did it for a while, man.
Was it worth it? Like,
Well,
did they really?
the point of these studies is to just pay attention to how the drug affects people in different situations. This is far from the only situation, but again, this is the perfect scenario, because you can see somebody in an environment where they think they're not being judged. They think they're safe, but, you know, so you're going to see how people are going to act in reaction to this drug in a state of degeneracy already, you know, versus where if you have other projects where people are in more of a clinical setting, you know, or people are already have mental issues, so they have different, again, this is science, you know, the science of the day too. You take all these different you know, subjects and the different conditions they're in, and that's what they're really paying attention to with this.
Yeah, and I think the key thing being that if it sounds a little less than scientific, it's because it was the science of the day, and that's what they were working with. That's the knowledge base they were forming all this shit on. So,
I mean, if they
like we
kept
look at
with
this stuff. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say if they kept with the same theme of, I mean, they're making it as replicatable as possible. They are controlling their variables.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're like, okay, brothel, check. Hooker, check.
Yeah.
Right.
John, check. I don't know. Were they mixing it with alcohol? That would be one thing where I'm like,
Or I don't know.
maybe
I
they try to
assume
do it with water or something.
probably.
Why does
or-
water
yeah.
taste a little like?
Yeah.
Just
But
like, I don't
wet.
drink water.
Well, I mean, the alcohol's really not going to make much of an effect when you're
right,
like 20 doses deep on acid, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, just like having a beer or two is not really going to
I was on
overpower.
acid one time and killed like half a fifth of Jameson, I think, and didn't feel it for a second. So yeah,
That's fair.
it was a long time
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah, it kind of it takes over.
Yeah. Yeah. But so I was gonna say though, but yeah, so that's just one of many things. Basically, the CIA started subcontracting to a ton of different scientists and different foundations to get more people to be involved, get more scientists to do different studies, and get different perspectives from experts on the subject into, you know, to get it, to feed it all up through the MKUltra program, so the CIA could know how the mind reacts in all these different ways to the LSD, to how people can be, what's the word?
Manipulated
Suggestibility, you know. So yeah, one of the major ones was the at Cornell. There was a big old it was a front basically funding the Human Ecology Fund here.
Yeah. And by the way, this is one of the few sub projects that we actually know about. I'm sure there's tens, if not more, of other sub projects that have never been declassified. This is just what we could find.
Right. And a lot of this is through grants to universities, you know. So it's like government funding grants, and these things will start to get kicked off here. So yeah, so the Human Ecology Fund here was 1955 to 1965.
Right.
Harold Wolff was a neurologist who focused on migraines and headaches, and then he met Alan Doles after treating his son for a brain injury, and they
hit it off.
They hit it off big time. He's like, "Wow,
Fast friends.
what a coincidence!" See, so
Like,
yeah,
I've given people you could say I've given people migraines before. yeah.
Yes.
By migraines, I mean life-altering LSD trips.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so Harold Wolff had a partner, Lawrence Hinkle, who focused on cardiovascular health. And so basically these two were chosen because the interest was how far can we push the body physiologically in these experiments to make people break.
Yeah.
And so let's scroll down on that one.
Yeah,
right
we've
there.
got a few. So we've got a few other key players.
Wait, hold on.
See if
There's
there's
a little
more
more on
on
that
there.
card.
On this one?
Yeah, there should be a little more,
Is it scroll?
or perhaps
Oh
not.
no, I think
guess
that
not.
was it. Okay,
yeah.
so this is bringing us to like some of our main characters here. Should we check out the mad sciences? Okay,
Yeah,
so
that's
we got
these guys right here,
Harold
so-
Wolff and Lawrence Hinkle, who we apparently couldn't find too much on, but
But
they were both involved in this. It was basically just a CIA front experiment going on at Cornell, and
Yeah, so they received something like almost a $29,000 grant from the CIA, and these two guys established the Human Ecology Fund, which was a site on location at Cornell University, which is where Jolly West comes in.
good old Jolly Green Giant.
He looks very reasonable in a way. I don't know. That's maybe it's just his broad face. I don't know.
Yeah, looks like looks kind of like what's the guy, Orson Welles, like the Citizen Kane guy. So we got Louis Jolyon West. I think that's how you pronounce it. But he's kind of the main character of this whole MKUltra operation, man.
Between him, Alan, and Sydney.
Yeah. So he was an officer in the United States Air Force Medical Service from 1948 to 1956. He completed his residency in psychiatry at Cornell, the chair of psychiatry at the University of Oklahoma. So he went from Cornell. He studied at Cornell and then worked at Oklahoma.
So-
It's ironic too that he wasn't there when the Human Ecology Fund started, actually. So we noticed that, but he actually wasn't there when that started, ironically. So
Yeah,
it's
he
kinda
just
crazy.
just
Happened
happened
to go there.
have a relation. Yep.
Wow.
So it wasn't until he made it to the University of Oklahoma where the CIA decided to pick him up for subcontract 43. I think it was
Right.
subproject 43.
And then turns out he was Jack Ruby's psychiatrist after his arrest, and so
We'll
you
get
know,
to that shortly.
yeah, we'll get to that. The like interconnected nature of this whole thing is just is nuts, and it's almost nauseating.
You could skip mostly
skip
over
all
the
that stuff.
history.
Okay, yeah.
All that shit gets broken out a little bit later.
Oh, but yeah, so he got most of his money through subproject.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go to Oklahoma.
Oh, there we go.
Yep.
Yeah, so he got most of his money through Project 43, which was the name of the grant that was the MKUltra sub grant that he got his money through. And so yeah, contracted for psychophysiological studies of hypnosis and suggestibility. That sums it up kind of.
Yeah,
And
so-
studies of dissociative taste.
So it seems,
States.
based on the phrasing, that he wasn't explicitly contracted without any, pre-awareness of this. He drafted a contract proposal for them and said, "I want to do this shit." So it shows more intent, I guess.
And so the
you know.
CIA was like, "I like your style."
Well, and then, I mean, just to go back up again, super quick, just scroll back up here. He actually was, keep going. He actually was in charge of being a psychologist for these people who were Korean prisoners of war, or prisoners of war in Korea. So
Yeah.
he was right there from the very start where they were looking into this kind of stuff too. He was their psychiatrist. So.
Oh yeah, he's appointed
panel.
to this panel to discover why airmen had confessed or cooperated in North Korean allegations of war crimes committed by the U.S. So yeah, he was essentially originally on a panel to audit war crimes.
Wow.
Yeah, and brainwashing
This is
allegations.
crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's gonna come up quite a bit throughout the rest of this.
Yeah, we could probably bounce over the mad scientist, or we already got those guys.
the mad
right?
Yeah,
sci-
just
or
go.
got
I
two.
think there's some important details on him though on the Harold Wolf card. So go
Oh,
there
okay.
real quick,
Yep.
and then scroll down. Let me see. Is that it?
But yeah, that's,
All right,
that's basically it.
all right. So yeah, but yeah, Human Ecology Fund was a front for all of these experiments here.
And they were researching torture methods, interrogation techniques, all sorts of, nasty things.
And again, so these guys, their whole thesis was pushing the body physically to the point of breaking, to where your mind breaks. So,
Right.
Yep.
pretty fucked up stuff.
So Cornell University people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so-
then so
At the same time in Canada.
Canada.
This is still an MKUltra project, despite it being out of the United States. This is explicitly a subcontract of MKUltra, where they use psychedelics, paralytic drugs, electroconvulsive therapy, all
called-
these things to experiment on people. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, the name of this technique was called psychic driving, and they'd put people into drug-induced comas and play loops in order to imprint certain ideas into their subconscious. And they used curare, which is like I think it was a South American or Central American. Like when you think of poison darts, you feel me? They'd administer large amounts of that, or glucose, you feel me? Like to basically give you like a diabetic coma.
Whoa.
Yeah, and so they'd put your ass out for like a month and just play loops of subliminal messaging underneath your bed as
I think that's basically what people think of when they think MKUltra is the sort of the visual and drugging feedback response combination.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where that sort of gets its reputation
Right.
from.
Yeah, so pull that easy back up and go down to this professor here, mad scientist here. His name is Donald Ewan Cameron, and he was a psychologist at the Allen Memorial Institute. So again, this is more of a hospital setting, like a clinical setting.
Psychiatrist, yeah.
But this guy was actually already a very impactful psychiatrist, because he was there at the Nuremberg trials, and he was doing psychological profiles of people who were being put on trial. Rudolf Hess was the deputy Führer for the Third Reich there.
Right.
And so he also did a sociological publication on Nazi Germany called the Social Reorganization of Germany, which so he's, and then Nuremberg and its significance, which ironic enough is about holding Germany accountable for its atrocities, and then he's gonna proceed to do these horrible things here. So again, like we were saying too, a lot of these people either have a affinity or a fixation, or they're already studying, whether it's a direct connection or not, they're already heavily invested in what the Nazi scientists were doing. And so that's crazy. Homie received $69,000 in 1957.
Oh, to 1964.
Yeah.
Wait, can we go back to that for a second?
Yeah, go back to that.
Funding from MKUltra sub-project 68, known as the Montreal experiments. So
MKUltra is
Canada.
international, by the way.
Yeah.
Canada's right, it's right next door, so we don't might not think of it that way, but this is an international project, and it's crazy. And again, his main thing is reprogramming. Was his goal. He thought he could cure schizophrenia by erasing all your. It's just funny too, because again, we know now it's like schizophrenia. That's not how schizophrenia works. It's not a memory problem. It's a brain problem. But he thought you could just wipe your whole brain clean and start over.
Damn.
And
wipe your whole hard drive.
Yeah, you'd be cured from schizophrenia. And he was trying to do that. And a big thing he said was, he was like, "Oh yeah, it's great. We could do it at my hospital because no one will know if you're acting weird. No one will notice, So they'll do that." And then a lot of people who came into his experiments, they came in for rudimentary stuff. They're like, "Hey man, I get migraines. Hey man, I can't sleep. Hey man, I got a little bit of PTSD from the war." But and they just came in, and he just did whatever.
Did his numbers.
And it's crazy. It's crazy because we're saying like, oh, they either were fascinated with what the Nazis were doing in World War II, but really, the Nazis were fascinated with what the U.S. was doing before World War II.
Yeah,
that's the
a
whole
whole nother
thing.
part of it too.
With because this is not different from like the Tuskegee experiments.
Yeah.
Where it's like people would again go in to a doctor for just like, oh, I broke my leg, and then they would put him under and then like do all sorts of stuff to him. They would castrate people, sterilization. So it's like
eugenics. Charles Gady. Charles Gady at Sac State. It's funny, the Cornell University guy there, I looked at the Cornell website, and a lot of his page was just super simplified down, like it didn't have a lot of these details at all. And that's exactly how Sac State is with Charles Gady, because Charles Gady was a fucking eugenicist, but he was also one of the biggest founders and donators to the college. And they got that on the hush. They got all his books and they burned them. They burned his whole library, burned all his notes. They try to keep that shit on the hush.
That's
because
wild.
Again, Sacramento. He lived out here in Sacramento.
That's craziness, man. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Gady Park, bro. Used to be called Gady Park, named after him. Piece of shit.
By the way,
scroll down again.
I was just interested, but the $69,000 that you dropped, so today's equivalent purchasing power is about $744,000. Just to
On
put
the
that in
rest of
perspective.
his
So not a small budget.
Just below $1 million, yes, as a budget to work with. Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's-
Oh,
that's
sorry,
insane.
there's more. Oh, there's more on
Yep.
this.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see if that's it.
No, that was it.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So let's bounce back
that's
up
up
here.
in Canada. That's going on.
Harvard.
So back to Harvard here.
So as a side note, we couldn't technically find anything connecting the Harvard experiments to MKUltra, but we felt like we should include them because they're so similar in nature.
Well, he was clearly inspired by all the same things that, say, Donald Cameron here was inspired by too, because Henry Murray, that's the name of the dude who was in charge of the experiments over here. He had his own kind of analytical papers written about Nazi Germany, and he was in the same scene of psychology as all these cats too. So again, if you're trying to get in on the psychological career that's going on back in these days, you're gonna know about these things, and you're gonna be learning about these things.
Right.
Yeah.
But so in Harvard, Henry Murray was putting experiments going on, and one of them happened to be a young Ted Kaczynski here, who'd go on to be known as the infamous Unabomber. So
So the whole goal of this was demoralization and verbal abuse. From what I can gather, is they were prompted to do a ton of research and self-introspection, and ultimately were demoralized and berated over their views and beliefs. Not only that, where they're conversations of these acts monitored and recorded. They were subsequently played back to further demoralize people.
Right.
So
basically, just like college students would sign up for this experiment.
They were told it was going to be a philosophy debate.
Right. Okay. So they actually didn't even know it was an experiment.
Yeah, no.
They were told
they were told it was going to be a philosophy debate. Yeah.
And they're like, and they were probably like, oh, and we'll pay you or whatever, or at least like
I would
give
hope
you
so, at
something,
least.
right?
Yeah.
Like to incentivize these college students to come in, and it's basically they're just biting off of the whole struggle session thing, but it's like an individual one where they would basically have you write an essay and be like, what are your aspirations in life? What are your goals? What do you want to do? What are all your dreams and hopes? And they're like, that's cool. And they just read back all your shit that they wrote, or all your shit that you wrote, and just just roast the fuck out of you and be like, you're stupid, you're gay, what, just like go off down the fucking list of like they probably
In that
did.
order?
I'm like not even joking. That probably is like part of what they said back. You know,
I feel like it doesn't even have to be that critical though. It's like if you have, say, for example, in this scenario, a professor at the top who's overseeing this, and they go through the trouble of building trust and you maybe like them to some degree.
Yeah.
You're emotionally invested in what they think of you, and then it just starts to become small comments that just like snowball into things that become greater and greater.
Right.
It's like you may have just put like your 100% best work into something, and you're like absolutely like stoked to show the world, and then you just get the
Well, this is
like
what
the little fucking like snide remarks in the comments that don't need to be there.
Well, here's the description of it too. Right here it says, I remember appearing one afternoon for a debate and being hooked up to electrodes and sat in a chair with bright lights and being told we were making a movie. I remember him attacking me, insulting me for my values, for opinions I'd expressed in my writing. I remember being shocked by the severity of the attack, and I remember feeling helpless to respond. What's the point of this? They've deceived me, telling me there was going to be a discussion when in fact it was just an attack.
Yeah.
So again, it's crazy. Because again, the physiological response is what was being monitored during these experiments too. It's like what is physically happening when you're being demoralized to this point.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is fucked up.
It's awful.
And just to clear one thing up, because I know like a lot of people that watch, you know, there's like a bunch of Joe Rogan episodes about MKUltra and stuff and acid and all this stuff, and it's become sort of just a talking point. It's like, yeah, that's what happened to the Unabombers. They just dosed them up with acid. It's like, that's not exactly confirmed. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they just gave college students a bunch of acid, but that's not necessarily like what's been reported, at least, as what went on with Ted Kaczynski. Like, it was more just.
I actually couldn't find anything that said that happened in these experiments.
I think
some of them said that. I think some of them said that there was some, but it's not. It wasn't explicitly like.
Yeah.
I think if that happened, it would have happened at Cornell University at the Human Ecology Fund. That seems to be where most of this like college-based stuff comes from, and then a lot of the Harvard experiments are just taken out of context. They're not actually like related, but a lot of people associate the two to the point where the Harvard experiments are even the like main representing point of MKUltra to some people, but they're technically not related.
Yeah, but it's all kind of under the same umbrella. It's definitely worth talking about.
This whole thing is a scientific movement. You feel me?
Yes,
they were all getting in on it. They're all trying to outdo each other. You know, everybody's in a rush to make the new breaking discovery and publish papers and go down in history. So they're excited. You know, they're like, oh man, I'm getting all this government funding. Yeah. Do we have a thing on Henry Murray? Do we have a card? I thought we did. I thought we did.
Go back to the page.
Did we have a Henry Murray page? I don't think
Maybe
so.
not.
I thought we did.
Shoot.
Okay. Well, anyways, if we're going to keep moving on there to Oklahoma, Subproject 43, back to our buddy Jolly West. This is where he really got kicked off with it, with the money, you know, the U.S. grants, you know. We kind of went over this already when we introduced him, but what he did do that was pretty unique. I don't think anybody else really did this. He gave an elephant LSD.
Yeah.
And it died.
Spoiler alert. R.I.P. Tusco.
Yeah.
Tusco's last trip.
May you live in peace. Rest in peace.
That just seems like
Rest in Power King, yeah.
It was
Dude,
at the
it's
zoo too. It was at the zoo. The Oklahoma Zoo gave him permission to do the experiment.
Yep.
And a lot of people, they actually recreated the experiment years later, like in the 90s, I think, or the 80s or the 90s, and they were like, the elephants are fine. Jolly West was a psycho and gave it acid. Then when it wasn't feeling too hot, it gave it stimmies to try to wake it up. And then when it was freaking out too much off the stimmies, they gave it like downers so that it would calm down. And then the elephant died. And it's like, damn, how many drugs are you to kill an elephant? You know,
I'm sorry, it's not funny.
This is kind of like just the experiment that just an insane child would run. Be like, Daddy, I want an elephant. It's like, how much is your elephant? He's like, $20,000, and he's like, perfect. I have $20,800 from the CIA.
Well, this is a lot like Topsy too, which I'm like, why the fuck do you guys hate elephants so much back in the day?
Wait,
like,
who's Topsy?
you don't know about Topsy the elephant, bro? Thomas
No.
Edison killed an elephant too.
Oh,
yeah.
practicing what
DC, bro. DC current, bro. Yeah. They put him on a board and zapped his ass, bro.
They're like,
about
see,
that.
look, it works fine.
Dude,
Bro,
and then
in
P.T.
the name of
Barnum
science.
too. Freaking P.T.
So
Barnum was in
powerful,
the
it can
name of
kill an
partying, though. You feel me?
Yeah.
At least there's that.
I can respect that.
Man,
Yeah.
Tusco stood so Harambe could. Tusco crawled so Harambe could run.
There we go.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
It's tough, bro. Yeah, man.
Damn. R.I.P.
uh,
Tusco, pouring
yeah.
out for Tusco.
R.I.P. Yeah.
So that's kind of all we wanted to touch on with Oklahoma.
So right, so we're okay. So we're leaving the Unabomber behind because he was not the Unabomber at this point.
For
Spoiler.
not yet.
For
No,
now.
yeah.
For now.
For a long time, he was just chilling.
Yeah.
So then in the meantime, obviously, JFK assassinated.
By Lee Harvey Oswald.
Allegedly. And then,
Supposedly, right.
before Lee Harvey Oswald could make any kind of a, confession or testimony or whatever, he got iced by Jack Ruby.
Yeah, I think he was in transit between prisons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Jack Ruby too was involved with organized crime and stuff too. He wasn't really like in the scene of this stuff per se, but he was more of like an organized crime mob kind of guy.
Right.
And
He was like a club owner at the time as well, so that kind of helped facilitate the local crime and gang activity.
Jack Ruby's not his real name, is it?
I can't remember.
I don't know. I feel like that sounds like a nickname. It sounds like a fucking Fallout New Vegas character,
I feel like,
you know?
well, it's probably because Jack Ruby has been fictionalized in a bunch of different things.
Right.
Yeah. He was in what's the fucking one by Gerard Way? The
Umbrella Academy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Umbrella Academy is pretty cool.
That was a pretty recent one where he was in.
Who was he in the Umbrella Academy?
He was Jack Ruby. He was just a bartender. So it was, I think it was season 2.
Right.
Season two where they went back in time.
Yeah, they go back in time.
So that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
That season was fire, bro. Honestly,
fire.
that shit
On
was
what?
tight. Yeah. Umbrella Academy.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
I'm very excited for the new season.
Yeah. We do.
But
So Sunday, November 24th, detectives were escorting Lee Harvey Oswald through the basement of the Dallas police headquarters toward an armored car. So he was going from a city jail to the county jail. And then, so Jack Ruby pops out of nowhere out of the side of the crowd, shoots him once in the abdomen. And then, so after that, Jack Ruby was held in isolation cell in police custody. Jolly West was appointed as Ruby's psychiatrist and pronounced him psychotic and delusional and suggested further interrogation under the influence of sodium thiopental and hypnosis.
So the thing is, though, is that he never displayed any signs of mental illness before in his life. He's a very competent guy, real 60 crime individual, organized crime, mob type of guy. It's almost like on Batman Forever, or no, Batman Forever. Batman Begins, where Falcone gets arrested and then Scarecrow goes in and gives him the Scarecrow gas, and then he's like, oh man, the guy's just lost it, He's
right.
It's like, really, he never had a problem a day in his life. He's like, I don't know, man, he just snapped.
So
That's interesting.
Right,
Falcone hella is a Jack Ruby type. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, that's what Scarecrow's whole kind of character is about. It's a psychologist using toxins to study fear. So
Damn.
Yeah, Scarecrow.
It's crazy how many different cultural references there are that kind of tie into this stuff. It's almost like, it's so crazy that when you hear all this stuff that's going on in real life, you're like, that kind of sounds like Batman, or that kind of sounds like a comic book or a movie or whatever. And it's like, yeah.
It's because ain't nothing new under the sun, son.
So Jolly West too is he formed the San Francisco Crash Pads to study the hippie movement as well. Oh, I have to mention, can we go back super quick too, since we're getting into San Francisco and hippie stuff too? Just go back to the Harvard stuff real quick, because Henry Murray, we didn't put a thing, but Henry Murray, at the same time he was doing these experiments, he was mentoring Timothy Leary, who was studying psychedelics, psilocybin, LSD, and Timothy Leary became one of the biggest figures in putting psychedelics out to the public during the hippie movement and stuff. So I thought that was a mentor. Yeah, he was mentoring Timothy Leary at the same time he was doing these experiments.
So is Timothy Leary kind of an asset then?
I don't know. Maybe
asset
maybe.
Or protege. I'm not sure if the difference is that consequential, but it's very, very interesting.
I think the thing is, Timothy Leary's message was like, this stuff's great. We gotta like get normal people access to it so that everybody can have their mind expanded. I think he was a little more of had a positive kind of intention, but I don't think that means he's any less of an asset or involved,
rather than experimenting on people.
Kind of a happy accident in a way, where it's like he's pushing it to make it easier to experiment, because it's just open. People are just open to taking it.
And thereby making it harder for people to get surreptitiously dosed without their knowledge. You know what I mean? Well, more people know that kind of thing happened. And
I'd have to look into it more, but I mean, who knows if that's a good thing or a bad thing, though, making the public so aware of psychedelics, you know? Right. Because back in, Summer of Love, you got tons of people coming over from all over the country, and San Francisco turns into a hellhole. You got 13-year-olds tripping on 1,000 milligrams of LSD, freaking getting melted, you know? But that's what this the San Francisco Crash Pad here is all about, because they wanted to study the degenerate in their natural habitat. So, Jolly West led a group of researchers to San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury district, far out, where they rented an apartment to study hippie culture during the last half of.
Which that's so funny to me. I'm sorry for interrupting, but they just they didn't have a research facility. They just fucking rented an apartment to do this in a supposed academic research study.
It's got to be hip, man. And this is part of this kind of ties into the Project Chaos too, where they're which is a mass surveillance campaign, because they're trying to sniff out the anti-war people, and so this kind of ties into that too, because again, the whole point was, I wouldn't want to go to hang out in a medical office. I want to hang out at a cool hippie apartment. You feel me? So,
it's true.
Get
a little high, crash on the couch, and let a couple of scientists poke me with some weird objects.
Dude, that's crazy, man. Because it's just a shame, because obviously we're not coming from like an anti-psychedelics angle.
No,
it's just like anything, right? It's like it's any technology, right? Like nuclear technology. It's like, oh, that could be sick if you use it to, like, you could power entire cities. You could power the whole world with nuclear. It could be so great. No pollution, blah, blah, blah. But then also it's like Hiroshima. it's like doing acid is like, it's sort of like sex. It could either be like one of the best or one of the worst experiences of your entire life, depending on the consequences. You know what I mean? Like it's all about I don't know. Yeah, it's like if you consent to taking acid, then it could be fucking awesome. But if not, it can be terrifying. And so, like we just watched yesterday A Clockwork Orange too, which like kind of, it was very eerie, like how much of that sort of ties in with the whole, because that's basically what happened to him. They're just, they take a guy who's like, well, this guy's a criminal. Let's send him off to this weird science facility and do a whole bunch of experiments on him and try to reform his brain. I guess the idea behind that was to, take a criminal person and then fuck them up mentally so much that they're unable to do crimes anymore, like physically unable. But
it's like a neural association between crime and just the feeling of wanting to die, which is like impending doom. So, I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but just like, it's not fun, it's not fun.
But man, the whole thing, because the whole part, spoiler alert, Clockwork Orange, where he tries to jump out the window at the end, he's just like, because he keeps hearing the Beethoven, like they But I mean, that is what you could do. It's like an advanced torture technique is use like a certain piece of music in association with.
They use Limp Bizkit, bro. The U.S. government uses Limp Bizkit as torture methods. These days.
My
They'll
God.
Put it on repeat. Yeah, that's
Really?
what they've confirmed that.
Rolling.
It's Break Stuff is the song they use. But
No way.
Yeah.
I feel
What?
like I heard somewhere they use the Barbie song
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
Aqua.
Just because it's so
Oh yeah, that
Infuriating.
Would be very infuriating.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, exactly. And it's like,
Very
Au-
demoralizing.
audio input is one of the things that like associates with memory the most too. You hear a song and you're like, whoa, I'm like teleported back to somewhere.
Right.
And that's what happens in the movie too. They ruin his favorite song. They ruin Beethoven because he has to watch all this fucked up stuff.
It also happens in another way towards the end of the movie, which, by the way, if you guys are concerned about spoilers, just stop
70
watching the video. Anyway,
50-year-old movie.
Towards the end of the movie, the guy who helps him out, who's in the wheelchair, I forget his name.
Yeah.
I forgot to.
But his wife was a victim of the main character, but he doesn't realize it until he's already helped this guy out off the street, pulled him into the bath, and the dude starts singing the same song that he was
Singing in the
singing the
rain.
night that the man suffered an attack on himself and his wife. So
Yeah.
singing in the rain. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it was a weird
Right.
inverse like relationship with those audio triggers in that
Audio
movie.
cues,
Right, because
yeah.
it's like if you can imagine, I mean, everybody has probably a song that if a certain song comes on, it reminds them of like a terrible memory or whatever, or like
Yeah, I got a
and you're
few.
like, turn this fucking, you're like, skip this fucking song right now. But just imagine that times 1,000. Like, just imagine that, but like your eyelids are held open and you're like being forced to watch
worst
like
thing you've ever
Nazi
seen.
World War II tapes and listen to Beethoven at the same time.
Kubrick's, I just gotta say, Kubrick is one of the best political satire writers, movie directors of all time, because it's such a dark but still comedic take on it. I remember this movie being so grim, but I was surprised at how much I kind of laughed and snarked at so much of it yesterday, because
It's funny.
it's so ridiculous that it's like, man, this is so fucked up, but this is how they got down,
Hey, it doesn't help that half of it's in like a semi-made-up language.
Yeah, they're
sounds
like
goofy as hell.
ridiculously British.
But the whole
droogies.
But the whole point was, we're going to reform these criminals one way or another by filling their brain full of chemicals and like bad mental associations. And then it just kind of works out where it's like, well, if they jump off a building after, then it's like problem solved, because then they're not clogging up, the prison system or whatever. That was kind of the logic to it, which is like probably pretty close to reality.
Yeah, truth be told.
And then so past that, so we got the hippie pad, which just leads on to everybody's favorite kooky fun guy, Charles Manson.
Which, interestingly enough, happened also in Haight-Ashbury.
Yeah.
Or Haight-Ashbury. I
Yeah,
think.
Haight-Ashbury. Yeah.
San Francisco's always been a degenerate hellhole.
Yeah. For real. So the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic and MKUltra. So this dude Roger Smith. Who's Roger Smith?
So scroll up, because that's not the top.
Or
of the
down.
list.
Or down. That's right. Roger Smith.
So we got our boy Charles Manson, and then the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic with Roger Smith, David Smith, and Alan Rose. So not Alan, but Roger and David founded the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic together.
So Roger Smith was Charlie Manson's parole officer. Charlie Manson was a degenerate. He was kind of influential in the music scene.
It's like a cult leader.
And not yet, but because he'd already gone to prison and gotten out. And so he was his parole officer was Roger Smith. But Roger Smith was involved with MKUltra because he was getting his doctorate at Berkeley. So basically, Charlie Manson would keep getting in trouble, and Roger Smith founded this Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic with Dave Smith here, and they would be observing people and studying people. But because he was already studying these things and he kept on hearing about Charlie Manson through people who would come into the clinic, he definitely wasn't going to turn Charlie Manson in for all the trouble he kept on getting into. Does that make sense?
He was
I
an
see.
opportunity for research.
I see.
Yeah. And
So because Charles Manson had access to a lot of the acid that was going around.
It's because he was influential in the community, and
Right.
people were hearing about what he was up to over there. And so one of the other people who worked at the institute, named Alan Rose, down here on the bottom left here, he went to go live with Charlie Manson for a couple months and study them, and then they published a paper on him and stuff.
Yeah, the group marriage commune, a case study. Yeah. So that was an academic paper that was released after Alan Rose spent, like 4 months, was it, hanging out with them, studying them. And that's just kind of an interesting connection, that they were so interested in Charles Manson that they had explicitly MKUltra subcontractors researching and observing him.
That's nuts, dude.
And apparently it was for good reason, because we all know what happened.
Helter Skelter.
Right. And yeah, I recommend anybody to listen to the Joe Rogan episode with this dude, Tom O'Neill, who wrote this book, Chaos, which is about this whole thing, about the official narrative with Charles Manson and like what was really going down. So basically, let's see. So the Manson family murders. Let's
That's
see.
more so just its own thing almost too. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like super duper, because that's just like a whole nother.
Yeah, it's a little
thing.
more tangential. It's related in the sense that, it's a lot of drugs, and we had MK operatives actually on scene,
But they-
potentially influencing his activities. And,
But
and
I think the
decision
idea,
making.
or like what I gathered from the Tom O'Neill thing, is that basically they kept letting Charles Manson off the hook so he could. It's like, and he was basically, becoming sort of this like cult leader type of guy. And where was he learning all these techniques from? Into like how to hypnotize people and suggest people do stuff, because he was turning what were just average weird drugged out hippies into murderers, basically.
Yeah.
Through like just dosing them with hella acid and basically MKUltraing them
Yeah.
into doing his bidding.
So,
or whatever.
I mean, it's never been expressly uncovered in that light, but I think the implication is strong enough for their, for the
Right.
connection to be made.
Well,
so.
again, tons of documents were destroyed once this stuff started to get wind to the public. They ordered tons of documents to be destroyed. So there is a lot about this stuff that they don't know. I even saw like a rebuttal from the CIA being like, Tom O'Neill doesn't know shit. Tom O'Neill can't prove shit. And it was hella funny because they were like, Tom O'Neill, yeah, it is weird, Tom O'Neill. I don't know how Charlie Manson did that, but you don't know shit. So, like,
So if they're concerned enough to make an address, a response, it's like it's clear that there's more to it than what they say.
yeah,
Right.
so yeah,
You guys ever listen to Charles Manson's music?
it's not very
No.
good. Yeah, it's not very good.
No.
It's just like pretty mid, like 60s, like hippie music. It's kind of funny.
Oh God, poor guy.
But what was I gonna say? So the official kind of story of what Charles Manson, I guess, was trying to do, he was like trying to start a race war, basically.
Yeah.
He was trying to trigger like a revolution by like, I don't know exactly, he was like ordering people to get murdered, basically.
So this is interesting. Obviously, the goal of Project Artichoke was to see if we could, get somebody to commit an assassination without having, previous knowledge that they were going to do that through
Right.
subliminal triggers. So I think a lot of that knowledge made its way down the line over the, the following decade into the Manson family hierarchy. And it's like, what better way to create division than use all of the psychological manipulation and drug abuse techniques they've learned to create a literal race war, like what is one of the oldest divisive methods that exists
Right.
in history. So I don't
Yeah.
know, political control or
Because this was like
counterintelligence.
right. And this was like
I
when the
don't know.
Black Panthers were like kind of like very like influential during that time. And so in Charles Manson's insane
Well, it
mental
was
state,
just a very contentious time in the whole, in terms of that in general.
Right.
So,
but basically his whole plan with like his little cult, like his family, whatever you want to call it, is that basically while this like race war was popping off, while this revolution was popping off, he would be hiding basically in some kind of bunker or just like away from society while like everybody kills each other or whatever. And then basically all the Mansonites or whatever you want to call them would come out and basically just take over, against all the other inferior races, whatever,
The cockroaches emerge from their hole.
Yeah, no, it's like
crazy, bro.
it's a crazy.
That's a whole episode in
other-
itself, honestly, because that shit's crazy, bro. Because that reminds me a lot of like Aum Shinrikyo too, but it's like it's the same shit, honestly.
what the hell is
That's
that?
the Japanese fucking Manson cult, basically, bro. Like Aum
yeah.
Shinrikyo, and he was like, same thing. Use hella psychedelics, and he was like, it was like a mix of like yoga. It's like Hindu yoga, Christianity, Buddhism, but he was just super tripped out. And again, he was like, oh, we're gonna like start a revolution. There's gonna be like nuclear war, and so we need to get political power. And they ran for the party office and stuff, and they ended up committing some domestic terrorism too over there.
Jesus.
And so these guys, these are not the Manson cult's just as dangerous, just as scary, but imagine how much worse it could have gotten.
Yeah.
Is because these fools are
That's
psychos.
nuts.
Cool.
Let me see. So good. Was there anything?
I think we basically
there.
hit on
Okay,
everything
okay,
back
okay.
here.
All right.
Yep, cool.
Yeah, we'll
So-
just kind of skate by the Manson stuff because, like,
you
that's
guys
a
should know.
whole other thing, bro.
Yeah, everybody kind of gets the general idea of what happened there. But yeah, that brings us straight to the destruction of the MKUltra files.
So CIA Director Richard Helms orders all MKUltra files destroyed, and that was 1973.
Yeah.
So we
That's
got
this big old cheese ball right here.
this cornball.
Yeah, look at him.
So here's the CIA director of the time.
Yep, and that was only really put on there as a point of reference because it wasn't necessarily discovered until later. So MKUltra actually became publicly known in 1975. Yeah,
And that's like 4 years after Clockwork Orange and all this other stuff had already come out.
Right.
Sort of, it's like, what the hell did, or not Kubrick, but the original author of Clockwork
Anthony
Orange.
Burgess.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, what the hell? What the hell did he know?
I mean, Kubrick too.
Yeah,
Fuck,
and Kubrick, right?
Kubrick too. Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of. There's like we could do whole other episodes on
Yeah,
Kubrick.
I'm down
honestly.
to do a whole episode on
Yeah.
Stanley Kubrick
it's a
because he's
big
fucking
conspiracy
sick. Yeah.
board.
I know, because we'll probably end up doing multiple parts on this too, just because like it's such a huge topic.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't even get like a chance to like connect it to like modern psychological studies, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of the same shit still
Yeah.
going on. It's just got a different moniker now, and it's got a different vibe
Right.
about it, but it's the same shit.
Yeah, maybe part 2 will be exclusively about the modern, consequences and implications moving into the future. But we'll
Yeah.
see. If you guys like it enough, let us know in the comments.
Yeah. So then if we jump to 1975, Project MKUltra was first brought to wide public attention in 1975 by the U.S. Congress through investigations by the Church Committee and by a presidential commission known as the Rockefeller Commission. The Church Committee and the Rockefeller Commission investigations relied on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the relatively small number of documents that survived Helms' destruction order. So again, all this stuff that we know now is only just such a small portion because so many of these documents were just
Yeah.
like actually burned. Or
So many of them were destroyed, and then what we know now is a small fraction of what remains and is actually declassified.
right from
Right.
different FOIA requests and different. Yeah, man.
Yeah,
that's
so
nuts, dude.
the extent and scope of these projects
a
is
fraction
still
of a fraction.
unknown.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, we don't know how deep it really goes.
kind of insane.
And it already goes deep as hell because it's like, dude, what we got the JFK connection, we got the freaking Charles Manson connection, there's the Unabomber connection.
Timothy Leary.
Yeah, Timothy Leary. I was even starting to look into there's like might be a connection there with Timothy McVeigh and MKUltra.
Not really. Is
And
when I
like
tried
the
to-
whole like what's the other guy there, but like there's a lot of these people that commit atrocious acts.
Yeah.
that it's like, what the hell led them to even do this?
I think people are just curious, and some people are removed enough from their emotions, like sociopath level, to where it doesn't really like affect them. You know what I mean? In that way, and I think that was the case with a lot of the Operation Paperclip people in particular. If you look at like footage of just how these people reacted, being read their crimes to them in a court for
all
war
these
crimes.
all these scientists think they're above morality. They don't.
Yeah.
They think that if what they're doing is in service of something bigger, it doesn't matter. But it's like these people, especially the Donald Cameron guy, I was like, dude, you're a horrible person. The way, like, the stuff that, you know, I was hearing some of the personal accounts about people who are victims of him, because a lot of people came out against him later, you know.
That was the Canada one, right?
Yeah, the Canadian guy.
Yes.
And it's just really bad, you know what I mean? Because this ruined people's lives. I think that's kind of something, again, we're watching Clockwork Orange. It's like when you come back to society after something like that, and your brain is just ruined in a way that nobody has literally even known about yet. You know, you're on the cutting edge of breaking someone's mind.
Yeah.
And how do people return to society after that? You know, it's fucked up.
It's hard to reintegrate.
But the church committee there,
Right.
Yeah, we got our boy Frank Church.
So basically, it was a committee that was supposed to investigate all the abuse that was going on by the CIA, NSA, and the FBI, and even the good old IRS.
Yep.
Chaired by Idaho Senator Frank Church. The committee was part of a series of investigations into intelligence abuses, in 1975, dubbed the Year of Intelligence.
you know who sat in on this commission too? On this committee? Our president, fucking Joe Biden. was
Yeah.
on the fucking- he was on the fucking seat.
Yeah.
Yep.
Shoot.
It was like a whole Senate hearing, and this was like 1977 or whatever. And it's like just to remind you exactly how long Joe Biden has been around.
Yeah, so that actually made me kind of trip out, because it's just right there, Joseph R. Biden, Delaware. I was like, damn.
That's great.
And so so we got the Church Committee, and then we got the Rockefeller Commission. So Gerald Ford, basically in 1975, to investigate the activities of the CIA and other intelligence agencies.
Yeah, so essentially the same goals as the Church Committee, and they worked in concert to reveal information.
Nelson Rockefeller was the vice president
Yep.
of Ford.
That's what
That's wild.
That's what the sources told me.
That makes sense.
You know,
That's crazy, dude.
I don't have them memorized. I got the books of the Bible memorized, but not the president's, bro.
So they're doing these investigations, and
Indeed.
doesn't necessarily turn out the way they would like, or the way we would like, which was for all this information to be available.
Yeah, no. Fortunately, the CIA had enough foresight to cover their asses.
Right.
Apparently not well enough, though, but just well enough for it to remain a mystery for basically the rest of time.
Right. It remains enough of a mystery for just like random people to make podcasts on it, but not enough to actually have anything be done.
Right.
And so in 1977, in an interview, 14-year CIA veteran.
He's like, they were doing unspeakable things, I tell you.
They were committing atrocities in Minecraft. No. 14-year CIA veteran Victor Marchetti specifically called the CIA claim that MKUltra was abandoned a cover story. On the Senate floor in 1977, Senator Ted Kennedy said, the deputy director of the CIA revealed that over 30 universities and institutions were involved in an extensive testing and experimentation program, which included covert drug tests on unwitting citizens at all social levels, high and low, Native Americans and foreign. Several of these tests involved the administration of LSD to unwitting subjects in social situations. At least one death, that of Dr. Frank Olsen, resulted from these activities. The agency itself acknowledged that these tests made little scientific sense. The agents doing the monitoring were not qualified scientific observers.
Yeah.
Man.
That sounds like
bro.
a lot of Senate hearings that I've listened to
Right.
over the years.
It's crazy that they could only get away with killing one government official. Like if one government guy dies off it, they're like, "Fuck, we got to pay their family $1 million. We can't keep doing this."
Right.
So they're just like, let's just find weird miscreants and degenerates that we can experiment on instead. Is basically the idea.
Yeah. Frank Olsen being clearly the only person who was actually addressed on the Senate
Right.
floor as having died. So
It's crazy. So yeah, these are the two main like whistleblowers in this situation, Ted Kennedy and Victor Marchetti, which is like, man, we're gonna have to tie it in too later with like RFK, gaining so much prominence right now. It's like, dude,
Yep.
the the powers that be do not want RFK around, bro, because he's about to swing the revenge hammer on these motherfuckers, bro. Like,
yeah. I think his platform is insane with the whole the CIA killed my uncle.
yeah, dude. Well, it's like
That's a wild. Yeah, that's a wild.
It's crazy.
Shooting
Like the
off.
Kennedy family just keeps getting iced, bro, by the CIA,
Well,
basically.
I mean, look at all this that's going on, though, dude. I mean,
Right.
JFK knew about all this stuff. JFK iconically gave a speech saying that there's a plot brewing underneath the surface in America, and I'm here to stop it.
Yeah.
And then a week later, he died. You know, and I mean, you could say you could say whatever it is you think it is, but I mean, all of this was going on, and he's the president. He knew about it.
Yeah, it seems like these guys, Alan Dulles and Sidney Gottlieb, were probably involved at some level, considering Sidney Gottlieb was the head of Assassinations and Alan was the actual director of the CIA, right? So I'm like, they've got to be players in that somehow.
Well, think
right?
about how many people would have gone to jail if there was just a transparency policy that had gone in on like a Kennedy second term somehow. That would have been really bad for all of these guys, to be honest. Like, but you know,
Shoot.
that's why he had to go.
And then we've got just
That's-
more like
that's more
cultural
like a book,
references,
yeah.
but basically this kind of ends off with, or like, you know, it does it. Well, that's the thing. It never really ended. Is kind of the
Yeah.
This is an aftermath.
Yeah.
right. So you see, 1977 is where all this like the whistleblowers and they start. You know, MKUltra becomes like a commonly known thing, and then it just so happens.
Yeah.
It just so happens that the year after that, 1978, Ted Kaczynski comes out of nowhere because basically, you know, they did all these experiments on young Ted Kaczynski, who was like this, you know, super like Einstein level IQ, giga brain guy. And, you know, his family says it's like, oh no, you know, the experiments didn't really affect him that much or whatever. It wasn't that big of a deal. But basically after that, he was just like, you know what, fuck this. I'm out of society. I'm going to go live in a cabin in the woods, basically. And just, he's like,
This was after he'd already become a professor, too, and had a career as a mathematician.
was it at Berkeley? I thought it was at...
It was at Berkeley. He went to Berkeley. Well, he went to... Yeah, he was a professor at Berkeley later as well as somewhere else. But, yeah, he'd already had a academic career.
Yeah. And he was only a professor... Or he was like a... I thought he was a... I don't know if he was a professor or if he was just a researcher.
He was a professor, I think he said.
Oh, okay. Well,
he had a doctorate. So.
Right. It was only for like kind of a brief amount of time. Like he wasn't there for a long time. He's like, I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, bro.
I feel it.
And so from all this time, from 1959 to 1978, he's kind of just minding his own business, writing his like, you know, his philosophy on the world and his whole like anti-technology sentiment, which is like, it's pretty interesting stuff, you know. But obviously he did some nab.
He ruined it for everyone. He,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
ruined living in the woods and writing manifestos for everybody
Yeah.
else.
Yeah, so my suspicion with this situation is that he heard the Senate hearing about all this stuff going down and something snapped in him, and maybe it took a few months, maybe it took a year or whatever, but eventually his hate boiled to the surface for what had been done to him. That's my theory. No confirmation on
he
that,
started
but-
hearing about MKUltra and then like something just popped off in his brain, and it's like in Kill Bill where it's like like the music starts going off and he's like, wait a fucking second, dude. So basically from 1978 to 1995, Kaczynski mailed or hand delivered a series of increasingly sophisticated bombs that cumulatively killed 3 people and injured 23 others. 16 bombs were attributed to Kaczynski. While the bombing devices varied widely through the years, many contained the initials FC, which Kaczynski later said stood for Freedom Club, inscribed on parts inside. He purposely left misleading clues in the devices and took extreme care in preparing them to avoid leaving fingerprints. Fingerprints found on some of the devices did not match those found on letters attributed to Kaczynski.
Interesting.
He was
So,
smart
yeah.
with it. Like
Clearly
the fact that he got away with it for so long.
yeah.
But basically his whole thing was he was like writing his manifesto during this, which was like against, you know, how technology's taken over society and all this kind of stuff. And but he would start sending letters in to, you know, to government officials, and basically he's like, I'll stop bombing motherfuckers if you publish my whole manifesto, which they did. And then, so, I mean, but that's kind of like his like fucked up, like twisted logic, which it's like, it is fucked up, but it's like, it's probably true actually. Like if you just released a book, if he was just some no-name whatever professor guy or guy that lived in a cabin in the woods and never did nothing, and then he just released a book and he's like, the consequences of the industrial whatever, no one would have cared, no one would have read it. But now we all know who the Unabomber is, and then it's like, oh, he's got this whole manifesto, and it's like,
it didn't have to be that way. I think he really fucked up because now he discredited himself. Anybody who sympathizes with his views has been discredited for years and years and years. And even though what he has to say is very interesting and it's very foretelling, a lot of the stuff that he predicted has come to pass.
Absolutely.
But again, you don't, I think if he had stuck in society, he could have made something better. Instead, he decided to go be a fucking weirdo.
Right.
And
you can always choose to make a positive choice and a positive change instead of drawing into yourself and becoming a weird recluse that commits terror acts.
Right.
So
it makes you wonder, like, if he didn't commit all of those terrible crimes with bombing people, it's like, and we somehow knew about just his ideology on the side, you just have a different look at it completely. I mean, you could credit all of the positive things, but to your point, it's like it's just tainted now because it's like, okay, well, so clearly your philosophy leads to you creating 16 bombs and killing people.
Well,
so.
and some of them, I mean,
Heath Ledger's Joker, by the way, is clearly inspired by him. Heath Ledger's Joker is clearly inspired by the Unabomber, the way he talks about everything.
And you could even argue that it's like some of the bombs were going to like political people or like people in charge of he would send it to like
those professors and politicians.
Politicians, like chairman of like lumber industry kind of execs and stuff like that. Computer store executives or computer store owners, like when computers were really popping off, he was just, and it's like
interesting.
But and then eventually the biggest one that it didn't end up really going off. It was like US flight 544 or whatever, and there's a bomb like in the plane. And it didn't actually go off like all the way. It like filled the cabin with smoke or whatever, but they were able to land. Like the plane didn't get destroyed. But like if that bomb went off, he would have I forget how many people were on it. It was like dozens of people. It was like 70, 80 people or whatever.
Yeah.
So he was ready to just, and I think it was just random passengers too.
Shit, dude.
Like it wasn't like specific targeted political person or anything like that. It was just definitely not the way to go about it.
No, I mean, especially if you're trying to drive home a specific point, like attacking random people, I don't think provides any sort of like, not that there's grounds for your argument when you're doing that kind of thing anyway, but like in your own mind, how do you justify anybody like taking what you say and you put forth into the world with any serious capacity when you're committing these acts?
But if you take an extremely intelligent person, do all sorts of crazy psychological manipulation to it, it's like that's literally how you get a supervillain origin story, which is basically what it is.
So and just to touch on this real quick again, I know we're talking a lot about the Clockwork Orange, but it's the same methodology to create some like sleeper cell, for example. You just attribute the emotion of rage to acts of ultraviolence instead of attributing the emotion of wanting to die. So instead of making an association that makes you withdraw from violence, it makes you hyper aggressive instead. So I mean, that's the kind of thing where it's like you never know. You'll just hear a song play one of these days, and you're just
No, for real. I mean, that's kind of like the scary part of it, where it's like the government feared. It's like, oh my God, are they gonna have a Manchurian candidate? Are they gonna have like a sleeper cell person where you could just take an unassuming person, but then the second that they hear some kind of like, it's like a hypnotist or whatever. It's like on the when you hear these words, you will start to act like a chicken. But instead of act like a chicken, it's like you're gonna schmom a schmelding. Like, you can convince like if you can convince an unassuming person to do something like that, it's like the options are limitless for how you can control someone.
I think Clockwork Orange 2 is a good representation of how those sorts of people could be sourced too. People who are pre-existing criminals and who've already been run
shit.
through
That's
the
what
system
Charlie
and
Manson,
abused by-
bro.
Yeah,
Charlie
exactly.
Manson was already, a degenerate piece of shit. Already went to prison, and it's like, okay, it's like, well, hey, what do you got going on? It lets them keep their hands off of it too, because it's like, again, it's like this person was so bad. Anything they do or any mistake they make can be attributed just to their vile nature already.
Yeah.
Well, and it was just a perfect way because it was like such an intersection with the whole hippie movement and in the 60s. And they were kind of, the hippies were very against the Vietnam War and against the sort of national interests and things. And they could say, the more chaos that the hippies caused, the better it worked out for them. They're like, oh, perfect. We get to just blame everything on like this whole like free love movement and all this kind of stuff. It kind of like played into their hand.
Yep. And it's kind of interesting how many roots this has in a lot of the modern cultural films that are super popular here in the United States as well as abroad. But we had a couple of things listed, I think, as well that we wanted to sort of touch on real quick before we really wrap up here.
Firestarter.
Yeah, cultural references you might want to catch up on if you want to get hip to sort of.
Firestarter is
vibe.
basically just Stranger Things. I mean, I guess Stranger Things already fucking,
they're a little
Stephen
different.
King, but...
Stranger Things is the Duff Brothers.
No, I know, but I'm saying like Stranger Things just hella bit off this because it's the same idea. It's like, like a woman, subjects herself to experience, and now her kid has superhuman
crazy
abilities.
Powers. Yeah, they are very similar in that crossover. In Firestarter, the woman gives birth to a child who ends up with pyrokinesis and some real anger problems. Stranger Things is based on the Montauk Project as well, which was
the Russian thing, right?
I think that was another U.S. government thing, but essentially they were doing similar psychological research, but in the interest of time travel and like remote viewing style stuff, from what I understand. But they're like proximally related to each other, so it's kind of,
yeah, that's a whole nother thing. Everybody's favorite fucking shooter, bro.
Call of Duty,
Black
oh my
Ops,
God.
bro. Such a MKUltra game, bro. Honestly, like it literally is all about all this stuff.
Yeah, let me read you the synopsis real quick. So the game Black Ops is set between 1961 and 68 during the Cold War and Vietnam War, and it follows CIA operations carried out secretly. The player controls CIA op Alex Mason, aided by fellow operatives, as they confront a nerve agent called Nova 6 and sleeper agents within the United States. The story involves various global locations and historical figures, such as Fidel Castro, John F. Kennedy. Mason discovers he was brainwashed as a Soviet sleeper agent, and he ultimately confronts his targets and escapes with Hudson, implying his involvement in President Kennedy's assassination.
That's so
Such
funny.
a banger, though, by the way. Such a classic, bro, because Nova 6 is supposed to be Agent Orange.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, but of course, the whole sleeper cell part of the story is like, oh, of course, it's a Soviet sleeper cell. It's like, we're not doing that.
Yeah,
it was the Russians. It's always what it is with Call of Duty and all this stuff. It's like, it's like just, whatever. I mean, hey, the U.S., Russia, China, etc., they've all done some insane things. I mean, if any of these governments had a way to do this kind of stuff, they would, and I'm sure they probably have.
Of course. There's a famous quote. I don't know if I'm butchering it slightly, but any technology that has been created has been certainly used for evil.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's wise to keep in mind with anything. So, Chat GPT, I'm looking at you. I'm sorry I had to bring up AI once. At least once in this episode.
Shit, man. Dude, we're like already hitting up close to 2 hours here. This is a thick episode.
Shit,
I mean,
bro.
and this is just kind of like, this is just us like trying to wade through the waters of this insanity, bro. Like, because it's like you don't really know that all these things have a common aspect, which is like Jolly West is kind of like the overlord. A lot of this stuff. It's like the fucking, you got the Unabomber, the Manson family, the
hippie culture.
Hippies, like all of this stuff.
JFK,
the JFK
assassination.
It all kind of ties in. And it's like, that's why we're organizing this whole thing into just a giant web, because that is what it is. It's like, and it's like, sorry if this was like tough to follow through various points, but that's because it is tough to follow. Like it's so much going on.
Just to let you guys know, it probably took us somewhere between 12 and 15 hours to put this this board together.
This is insane.
So we got the post-credit scenes, though, bro. The post-credit scenes, because Yuri Bezmenov actually has something to say too, because he was a Soviet intelligence defector, and he said the main emphasis of the KGB isn't in espionage, it's in societal manipulation. 85% of their funding went to ideological subversion and psychological warfare. So that's the post-credit scene for y'all. Next time we get into this topic, we're going to be talking about society-wide mass influence and how to influence a society on a while.
Yeah, and the reason we put Yuri on there
Social
is because we have Black Ops 1, and then in the most recent Black Ops, they used a clip of Yuri Bezmenov's famous interview in the promo material.
The Yuri
that
stuff is even more chilling than all of this stuff, because this is how to control an individual on an individual level. That stuff's how to control a society and get massive groups of people to act how you want them to. And that's again, I'm like, that's the post-credit scene for this episode.
Right.
It's
crazy.
Let me pose this one question for closing. So out of all the minimal information that we have of documents that have been classified, like we said before, this is like a fraction of burnt documents, and then from that document pool that survived, we're only allowed declassified what we can see, right? So how effective do you think they got it in terms of, do you think they achieved a full-fledged sleeper agent, or they achieved a full-fledged type of mind control, or they achieved a full-fledged,
I think there's an argument, and not to get us banned here, I'll keep it as vague as I can. There's been an argument going around for a long time that a lot of the tragic incidents that have been happening at American schools for a long time have been directly related to projects like these. And there's not exactly hard evidence all the time, but I think one of the famous QAnon quotes is, "How many coincidences?"
Yeah, right. No, it's true. Yeah. Well, because I'll go. Oh, like every time that one of these like terrible events happens, it's always like comes out that they were previously known. Like the FBI knew about them, but. Or the CIA or whatever. It's like there's all these federal agencies that it's like, yeah, we knew this person was about to snap, and like, I mean, that's a way you could do with it. Like, you don't have to like trap someone inside of a laboratory and like give them LSD. You could just be like, take an already crazy paranoid person that might have schizophrenia or might have whatever,
and just become their friend,
and then become their friend online. I mean, there's so many examples of that kind of stuff, and then and it's like, if you show up, it's like, then you get the actual cops or the actual FBI or CIA or whatever to show up to someone's house, like while their parents aren't there or whatever. And then they take an already crazy person, and then they're like, oh, then after that, the cops give them a warning or whatever. And then they're really like, the cops are after me. That everybody knows, like, you're a fed. Like, you can really just twist someone's whole psyche up.
Yeah, it's kind of like what I was saying with the Harvard experiments, where it doesn't necessarily have to be so brazen and explicit in people's faces. You take small things, small comments over a longer period of time sometimes, and those sort of things build up to demoralize a person over a long period of time. Like, you can make somebody
compounding
paranoid.
Effect of demoralization. I think that's probably the best way to do it, because it's the most subverted.
There's also it's a little more less documented and a little more in the conspiracy territory, but like there's Project Monarch, where it's like you don't even need drugs. You can just traumatize somebody, and then they'll be very susceptible to being influenced, and the suggestibility goes through the roof once somebody is just traumatized, whether it be through violence or being assaulted, or for even just seeing something that's psychologically traumatizing. So I think that they've gotten in on that of like collectively traumatizing people. I think they've gotten good at that and making people to kind of, again, like I said, the kind of next step in this to me is like the society-wide control,
Right.
because that's the stuff that, like, the sociological kind of stuff, like the social engineering kind of techniques that I've seen in my own life with my own fucking eyes. Yeah, they succeeded with all this stuff for sure.
Well,
it's
I
not
think.
logistically reasonable to pursue a project like MKUltra at a grand scale either, because you can't mass drug the public and mass hypnotize the public.
Exactly.
You
With
have
the
to
water
work.
source potentially.
I mean, people have tried and been promptly arrested. But I think you're right about how they had to, expand their thinking, and the Soviets were probably on the tip more than them, and they took some notes and went
Exactly.
more along the route of social demoralization and the breakdown of culture
Right.
and people's identity with things like art and music. And over time, that creates longer, cascading
I
effects.
should have included, but the Cultural Revolution in the 70s from Mao Zedong, it's even worse than the first rounds, because they got all the younger kids, because everybody who survived that first round was like, okay, we're not doing that shit. But then he hopped up the next generation to be like, oh, all these old heads, they don't know what's up, like, they hate you, it's your fault, we had it good, and they ruined it for you. And so he hopped up all these college kids, and they did the whole thing, they ran the whole thing back again. And it's all about, again, traumatizing people
The
who are
Red
at
Guard
a
or
point.
whatever?
The little red book, Mao's
the
little
Red
red
Guard,
book. So I think they moved past the individual level. I think that
They made it obsolete.
Yeah.
Because just taking one person and making them completely insane is like too much of a liability, because then they start doing Unabomber shit. But if you can just take 1 million people and make them all like
Sort of
2,
insane.
2, 3, 4, 5% more insane,
Yep.
because like when you think about psychology, you're thinking about just one person's brain, but you have to almost think of it as like, one nation or one, or just like the whole world, is like one like super organism, one giant brain. And so if you can kind of just generally infect the culture or the cultural
And
zeitgeist,
they
then
were-
you can,
they were just doing studies too. Like, I should have included it, but there was a recent study where they were talking about like increased susceptibility to being suggestible with people who are on the spectrum. And so we have more and more people who are openly identifying, saying that they're some level of autistic, and there's studies that are saying, yes, people that are more autistic are easier to basically gaslight.
Okay, so that leads perfectly into what I was about to bring up, which is probably I think one of the most well-known modern examples of something people attribute to the research generated by MKUltra, and that is Elsa Gate, which was a YouTube phenomenon that started popping up a couple years ago. I think maybe 3-4 years ago now.
Stuff's
where
terrifying.
It's terrifying, right? Where it's artificially generated, in most cases, cartoons where they feature an uncannily similar animation style and aesthetic across the board between hundreds of different YouTube channels. And all these cartoons explicitly feature popular child characters, Elsa from Frozen and Spider-Man from Spider-Man. And together they would do unspeakable acts, and there would be fetish-related material, trypophobia-related material,
Violence.
physical abuse, drug abuse,
Gore.
And these are all animated for children in a children's-style cartoon format. And the worst part about this is these videos were getting past the YouTube Kids algorithm filter for months and months and months. I don't think YouTube ever cracked down on it. So these videos were getting fed directly to all these young, potentially autistic children out there who are super hyper fans of their superheroes or whatever, and watching them, like pee on each other or something.
It's crazy that you say that, because my girlfriend's nephew, we used to like have him over a lot, watching, babysitting him, all that kind of stuff, and he loves Sonic like to death. He like, that's like his favorite thing, like And I remember, like, he would be on YouTube, and he would just go on YouTube and look up Sonic, and like it would be videos like that like just super disturbing videos of Sonic doing all these different things with his different characters and stuff like that. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, you can't watch Sonic unless we're in the room to make sure that it's actually, like,
I know. I remember the first time
okay.
I seen that
You can't
shit
trust
too.
YouTube
It's just
kids.
it just auto played into it, and I remember just being like, "The fuck am I looking at?" And it was like fucking Mickey and fucking something to I think that those were AI generated.
Yeah,
I think they already had
Seemed
that
like it was,
technology,
yeah.
and that shit. That's how that was so. Because people were like, "Who the fuck's making this?" I was like, "It's got to be either a sweatshop or it's got to be AI." And now we know about AI. It's like they're probably feeding because they're all the same. They all have the same kind of structure to them too, of the same bullshit happening in them.
It's one of the original examples of an automation channel using
Yeah.
like a Python script to make videos.
It's not exactly AI necessarily, but it's like it's kind of like just a random generator of like different like permutations of the same video, basically.
We'll call it a baby language model.
Yeah, there you go. Yikes.
Laugh. Anyway.
But again, that just kind of ties in though, where it's like the wider society wide has clearly been where they turn their focus to. I think that some people, I mean, you go deep enough on the internet, some people might be getting singled out by people. They try to manipulate your head, but the social engineering, I think, is what they took a pivot towards. Especially Gibraltar loves social engineering. Saw a ton of it during his freaking administration. Even as a teenager, I was like, what the? I was like, this is so clearly just fucking. They're trying to get people to think certain type of way, and that's or two. There's those big talk about mass formation psychosis, where everybody's doing the cha-cha slide to the left. Take it back now, y'all. Like, and just, COVID saw a ton of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, and again, I mean, shit, we had some thought reform type shit going on during that. It said you couldn't say certain things. If you thought certain things, the rest of society would pounce on you.
Yep.
And that's where I think this thing, I'd be down to pick up on that subject next time we approach the topic.
It's all already happening, in my opinion. And it's like every form of hypnosis or mass manipulation or whatever you want to call it that I know of is always voluntary. You have to participate with it. You have to kind of be willing to be hypnotized in order to be hypnotized. But I think that the system is set up to where like we don't even know that we're allowing the hypnosis.
It's participation through
Passive
ignorance.
volunteerism. Exactly.
Also too, people are suggestible when they're horny and when they're afraid. And look how much ass is on Instagram these days. Look how much sex and degeneracy has fucking perverted society these days.
Yeah, the media's telling you about every war, every terrible thing that's happening all the time.
Coronavirus, whatever it is, it's all designed to keep us in a certain way of thinking.
No. Yeah, like you literally like it on any given day, like when you just look at social media, it's like titties, George Floyd, bombs, like it's like all of the like just most like all of the things that can trigger visceral emotions in you all at the same time.
And then in between that, every single ad is like, here's how you scale your coaching business to $1,000 million billion a month. Just download my fucking free PDF and I'll put my dick up your
Just like you just get to pick your flavor of programming.
Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you.
Man.
Well put.
Yeah, man. Shit's crazy. I think, again, too, an important takeaway from this whole thing is that the government will experiment on you. They don't care.
They probably already have.
They probably have. They will. They've done it before. They'll do it again. That's one of the biggest things. And again, science is just a method. Anybody can do science to use anything. Science is not inherently free of if science is not pure. There's a lot of arguments these days that science is a pure thing, and because it's being constantly refined, that makes it better. No, because it's being constantly refined, that means somebody's wrong right now. Somebody who's doing science right now is wrong, and
somebody has to be wrong.
It has,
and we got to figure out what's wrong before we can figure out what's right in a lot of cases.
The whole point is not saying, not saying that it's right. It's about finding out when it's going to be wrong. That's what science is all about. So we found out what they were doing here was very, very wrong, and we need to make sure not to let it happen again.
Indeed.
Yep.
Know your history, folks.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in. It's been a beautiful episode of ZUDECAST, number 83.
Hell yeah. Catch us next week with a very light episode.
Let's I think we have some chats, so let's check that before we go.
Let's follow from a while back. But,
blasting through these people.
Shout out. We probably
you're
missed
good.
Hookers and elephants.
We were a little bit into it.
Hookers and elephants. There we go. All right.
Thanks, guys.
But thanks everybody for tuning in. And that's that's been it.
Hell yeah. See y'all next week.
Peace, y'all.